turn it over, Keith. Take it away.
Appreciate it. So I had to stand behind this microphone, or you won't hear me, or the thing won't pick me up. So this is going to be awkward because I'm not used to this.
You want this one?
Maybe. Can we switch over to that?
Yeah, just
Thanks.
turn it on.
Oop.
Right there. Just flip that.
That might be a little easier for me. I tend to walk around while I'm talking. But we're going to talk about building to scale with SALT. Specifically, we're going to talk about the data layer. I am a principal database reliability engineer at Everbridge, and that simply means that I work with our data layer. I write a lot of SALT. I help our team with that, and together our team provides support for, I don't know the actual count, but it's hundreds of database servers that we manage from development all the way through our production environments. Everbridge, and I don't have a slide about this, but I did just want to interject this so that you have an idea of what our company does. We provide what they call emergency mass communications. So we deal with everything from text messages that you could opt into through a company that we own called Nixle that gets you alerts about stuff like the California wildfires that just happened, all the way through state level stuff. We have a deal with the state of Florida, for example, when hurricane, which I live in Florida, so this is kind of important to me. When a hurricane comes through, people get notification and they know when they have to evacuate, or if they need to evacuate. So our infrastructure is critical to what we do. I did write a book a while ago. Please don't go buy it. It's not really going to benefit me very much. I'll get about $1. And it's kind of dated. We wrote it right when MySQL 5.1 was coming out. So the information in there it's a little dated. It's a lot of it's good information. But anyways, so what do? We build, just like it says, repeatable and reliable systems that scale to meet our customers' needs. One of the things that I'm trying very hard right now is actually to empower the customers of DRE, and I don't mean necessarily end customers. I'm talking about services in our company, to be able to build their own data layer services with minimal input from us. So in other words, I don't have to go out and build a stack for one of our teams called CAMS. They happen to do a very good job of that. They'll build Elasticsearch, Mongo, Kafka, Zookeeper, populate it all, set it up, users, all by themselves, because we've done the groundwork to make that happen. Okay? Can be honest. I hope that's all right. I hate going to a presentation right after lunch and you're sitting there, even if it's a good presentation, which I hope this one is. My goodness. You guys come on in. It's okay. We got people standing at the door. I don't know why. But you start getting sleepy because it's right after lunch. Lunch was great, but I hope what we provide is going to be useful stuff. Why don't you, I'm going to try and make this fast. Okay? We got 30 minutes. I've got a problem, though. Can I be honest? I mean, really? Tell you something? I'm from Florida. I grew up there. I'm from the South. We talk slow. So I'm going to have to try really hard to make this fast. So keep that in mind. Hold on to your seatbelts. And I'm actually going to set a timer as well to make sure I do stay on time. So if you'll give me about 2 seconds, we will really get rolling with this. All right. I don't think we want. Maybe I'm not. Oh well. All right. I'm going to very briefly tell you about myself. I spent about 10 years working as a system administrator, Linux, Unix systems. I then transitioned over in 2007. I started working as a MySQL DBA full-time. I have been involved in the data layer ever since. So for the last 12 years, roughly, I've been working in the data layer. I moved out of, I still work with MySQL, but I moved on to other stuff as well. And then about 5-6 years ago, I started working with automation tools, Ansible. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that. Salt, somewhere along in there. And I have been doing Salt full time for the last 4 or 5 years, three or 4 years. Sorry, 3 or 4 years. And that's all I've been doing. I've been helping companies transition from data centers up to AWS. For up until Everbridge, I was a consultant at Everbridge, and then I did choose to go to work for them as an employee after 9 months. But all that time up till that, we were transitioning people to the cloud, to AWS, and I learned a lot along the way there. So, anyways, I'm telling you all that just to say that I feel like I've got the background to talk about how we can move a data layer from a kind of a traditional setup. I was an old school DBA. You don't touch my servers, okay? You system administrator people, don't touch my servers. They're my servers. They're sacred. And I was there. I'll be honest. And I understand the mindset. And a lot of DBAs still have that mindset. We're going to talk about that for just a minute. Okay? I think this is actually really important. I think we can skip that one. Database servers aren't unique. They are a little special, and we'll talk about that. But they're not unique. And we don't have to treat them as being unique. There's a great slide deck from back in 2012, I think. I have the notes here. Sorry. By a man named Randy Bias, talking about scaling out versus scaling up. Okay? And in that slide deck, he gave an attribution to a guy named Bill Baker that worked at Microsoft. Okay? And this is a very famous quote. I bet some of you have heard this. This presentation is actually where it comes from. It says, scale up. Servers are like pets. You name them, and when they get sick, you nurse them back to health. I have done that. I don't know how many times, right? I used to name, I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, not the movies, the books, just so we're clear. I named a server Rivendell, and I remember it to this day, right? Just what I did because it was special. So he said, you can treat them like that, or you can treat them like cattle. So servers are like cattle. You can number them, and when they get sick, hold on to your seats. You shoot them. A little severe. But the analogy fits really well in the DevOps world, where we're trying to scale systems. Oh, my web server isn't working. Kill it. Rebuild it. We may take the time to analyze it to try and figure out what happens, but we don't keep it around. It's not a pet. You see what I'm saying? In the data layer, we resisted that for a long, long time. Okay? And it's still going on. And as a principal DRE, one of my goals is to help move us out of that mentality into we're just like all the other servers, except our data is special. And let me talk about that for just a second. All right. A company has no more important asset than its data. Right after that, it's employees. The servers don't matter. They're just servers. In my world, they're just things we spin up in AWS. Oh, I need this size, done. Oh, I need a little bigger, done. Right? It's just a thing. My data is what runs that company and the people who are supporting that. Okay? Can't talk about employees today or we'll be here all day. But the data is what's special. And we do have to make consideration for that. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But other than that, we can treat our database servers virtually the same as any other system. If you're in a CI/CD pipeline or you're moving that direction, I can tell you this, you can do that with your database servers too. It's a little more difficult, but it is worth it in the end. When I was a DBA, I could manage 20 servers to myself, production servers. Not a whole lot, but we did a lot of work on those servers. I mean, they were our pets. They required lots of care. Now that we leverage technologies like Salt, we manage many, many more than that. And as we move into this CI/CD paradigm, where we're treating our databases just like all the other servers, we can manage thousands of servers with a small group of people, right? Right now, I work on a team of 9 people. If we're missing a couple slots right now, but if everybody was there, 9 people, okay? With the right tooling in place, we could manage, with just a few more people, we could manage not hundreds of servers, but we could manage more than 1,000 database servers, okay? That's how companies like Facebook do it. They don't have a giant pool of DBAs who manage their databases. They have thousands of databases, guys, servers, thousands. But the company does, I mean, there's not 100 DBAs at Facebook, right? So, anyways, what are we going to talk about? I did consulting for a while. Go into a company, help them with their MySQL setup typically. One of the first questions I would always ask, do you back up your databases? Yes, almost always. That's good. Second question, do you ever test those backups? Never thought about that. You know, when you think about that, it's when you need to restore that data into prod because somebody did something wrong, right? Or life happened, or server died, or whatever. And then we do a restore, and it's not quite right. And then it's a real problem. I have personal experience with this. 1996, I started a ISP, dial-up internet provider. That's what we had back then. Cable internet was brand new. Anyways, I had a Windows NT4 server. I've repented of that. It's my burden. I have to carry it. But I did. And I was running IIS on it. And I had a 4 mil tape drive on it. Anybody know what a 4 mil? Little tiny, held probably a couple gigabytes, 4. Every night I would back up my system. I would do a full backup on like Saturday nights, and then I would do incremental backups during the week. One Saturday night, I had to install a service pack. I waited until all my users were offline. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I guess users didn't have lives, but whatever. I installed the service pack. I made a backup right before I did it because I'm smart. Booted the server and it blue screened. And I panicked. I'm like, crap. Fiddled around with it for about half an hour. I couldn't get it back online. I got to restore from backup. Oh, I took a backup right before I restored the backup. System came up beautifully. There's everything. Yes. And then I realized users couldn't dial in. What's an ISP's job? Take somebody that dials in, connect them to the internet. My users could not connect. I used a service called RAS, Remote Access Service. That's how they got authenticated. All those users were not backed up. And I'd never checked. And the only thing that saved my bacon and my company literally was the fact that when a user called in, when somebody signed up, I filled out the form, username, password, their address, etc. Piece of paper in a folder, in a box. I had to take all those folders. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning at this point. I've been up all day before. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. Now I got to put all these users in. And it sucked. Sorry. It's probably not the best word to use, but it did. I stayed up. The sun was way up. I get all the users in. I'm like, I was exhausted. I went home. I gave the phone to my wife. I'm like, if people call, fix their password. This is how you do it, blah, blah, blah. Because I didn't get every password in right. Fortunately, I got the majority of them. I provided good service. My customers were a little forgiving, and we moved past that. I don't think I actually lost anybody over that. But I could have lost my company if I just didn't have that. But because I had never tested my backups. I just actually had a situation fairly recently where we came across a situation where a backup wasn't doing what we thought because we didn't test our backups. What are some of the things we can do? I'm a little off track. It is directly about this, though. We can configure our backup scripts, of course. That's really obvious. Script gets dumped on the server. We can manage our data retention. In our case, we shove everything up to S3. Okay? It gets written locally, then it gets pushed to S3. We have a mandate. You keep data 18 months, whatever it is in your case. Do you go and prune that data manually? Or do you have Salt do it? It's pretty easy to write a state that you fire off to do that. Okay? So that's something maybe you need to think about. And what I was just talking about. Automating the testing of backups. The reality is if you don't, you won't do it. It won't get done. You will be, even though it's important, you'll get busy, it just won't get done. So if we automate it, if we write some Salt scripts, and we use Terraform, so spin up a server, apply the states, apply the backup. And then you get bonus points if, instead of having somebody log in and check that, you automate the verification of the backup. Unit test for backup, right? And I'm going to probably do that 3 more times. All right? And now I need to find my place in my notes. Oh, all right. System up. Oh. Everybody go, oh. Guys, that was my laptop last night. I forgot I stuck this slide in here real quick this morning. Literally, I'm working on my notes, which is a good thing to keep me on track, right? On my laptop, I got up, went to the kitchen to heat some pizza, come back, or while I was in there, I hear this thump. My laptop fell off the bed, 2.5 feet down, and cracked the screen and did something to the video card or whatever. I can't log in. The only thing that saved my bacon is I had to pack up because I'm a paranoid DBA. It's good to be that way if you're a DBA. So I had the changes that I'd been working on that night, I had not saved in an email. But I was able to download it onto my personal laptop. My other one's toast. And that's why we're actually looking at pretty pictures instead of just listening to me ramble on, right? Okay. Manage it. Oh, I don't have it. No, never mind. Notes don't quite correlate with what we got up here. This is some reasonably obvious stuff. Configuration of the basic service, right? The underlying operating system. Addition of users, and by users, I'm talking about users for the database service itself, not system users. Again, that's probably pretty straightforward. At this point, we kind of get into some more advanced stuff. Do we have people here who work with the data layer? Cool. So you guys know what replication is. When you have a cluster of servers, let's say Mongo, they talk to each other. It's called replication. Okay? We configure replication for Postgres, MySQL, Mongo, and Elasticsearch. That's all done via salt state. So that's a big win right there. And then deployment of seed data. I'll take just a second to explain this. Seed data in our case means we want to be able to spin up a data layer service and provide schema, data, indexes, whatever, for when that service comes online. And maybe that's for development, maybe it's for QA, maybe it is for prod. Okay? We do that via Salt as well. All right, how do we patch our systems? I really want to look at this SecOps thing. I do. We don't run enterprise, unfortunately, at Everbridge. We've looked at it. We're looking at it. I'm sure we can. It would solve, I think, that issue. And we'll talk about that for just how we deal with it. But it would also help us with some other issues where we've got multiple masters that are across multiple VPCs. And I'm trying to spin up servers that are talking to each other across those VPCs. But I have to be able to run a salt state. Anyways, sorry. Salt state enterprise, right? Salt stack, sorry. How do you patch your systems? I'm going to go ahead and throw all these up. And then we'll talk about, do you patch your systems by hand? Do you run a apt-get update via, a salt command run? Even that's probably not the best thing, especially when you're dealing with a lot of servers. The way that we deal with it, let me rewind, sorry. We run a very security conscious environment. We have a certification called FedRAMP, which is a federal thing, and that way we can get federal business, which we have some. We have to have patches done within 2 weeks of them coming out. We don't have a whole lot of time. And then when you got a bunch of servers, how do we do that? Do we just dedicate somebody to running around, running an app, get update all the time? No, that doesn't work real well. Are you running current kernels? Same issue there, right? And last, are you counting on your firewall as your security? That used to be really popular. Oh, I got a firewall, I'm good. It's not so much anymore. I think most people have moved on from that. But security is, you do security in layers. Yes, firewall, that's a good thing. Make sure your users have the right permissions. That's another thing. Make sure I'm not running unnecessary services, and so on and so forth, right? So please don't just count on your firewall for protection, especially with your company's data. I don't care what you do with your web server, but, right? Sorry, old school DBA coming out. How do we patch our systems? We actually do AMI upgrades. Quarterly, we go through and we update the whole AMI. Again, this is actually the exact opposite of old school DBA thinking, right? Oh, we want our server to run forever and we don't touch it. That's ultimately a really bad thing, right? There's a story about that I'm not going to go into because of lack of time. but it's a really bad thing. It's better for you to have that server being refreshed frequently than it is for it to sit there forever. Even if you're doing the updates on it and running, what happens if it goes down and when you bring up another server, that server doesn't work? And then you're screwed, right? So we do an AMI update quarterly. That is actually something that one of my colleagues is here. She's going to talk at the very end. You guys do that at your layer, though, everywhere. We are just rolling that out in the interest of full disclosure, right? How do we upgrade our services? Old school DBA thinking, oh, we'll just stay on that version forever. No, we need to update it, right? Doesn't mean we update every time they drop a new version, but we need to update it. How do we do that? How do we deal with that when we've got, these are not just simple servers who are sitting there by themselves. These are servers that they're in a cluster. Well, in our case, they're all in clusters, right? So they're replicating to each other. We can't just willy-nilly drop the server and pull a new one up under it. Okay, so we've written some salt states. Again, we do the AMI upgrade. We have a salt state to gracefully shut that server down. We have a salt state that brings it up, repopulates everything as needed. We save the data. That may or may not be your case, but we deal with a fair amount of data. So at some point, it becomes counterproductive to reload the data every time you do one of these, right? This is something that, This is something that we do at Everbridge. I don't know. Do y'all know what I mean by an ephemeral development environment? I mean the ability to spin up an environment, create a new branch, or, well, you do that before. Write some code, test it, tear down the environment. That's an ephemeral development environment. Okay? We use Salt for that. For all of that. I can build I'm writing some code right now for Mongo sharding. And, I'm fixing some Mongo sharding code. I'm writing some code to do an upgrade from Mongo 3.6 to Mongo 4. Okay? I need an environment that looks just like the other servers out there. Or I can't be certain when I commit my code that it's going to work. I can use the same AMIs. I can use the same configuration. I may have different passwords in there. We do, right? Because we don't want the same passwords in development that we do in production. And I've got the proper seed data, and all that's handled via orchestration and salt states. We run through from Mongo, like 6 salt states to build all that. Okay, and it's all orchestrated. Pretty cool. Code deploys. This is something that the DBAs drag their feet onto. We love running our SQL. We can automate schema changes. Schema changes are like table structures, indexes, that kind of thing. We can automate data deployments and modifications. That can all be automated. It can all become part of that CI/CD pipeline so that it flows from dev all the way up through prod, right? User management. I'll be honest, this is something we don't do as well as we should. This is something that I'm going to be working on probably very early next year. So somebody will leave. Do we remove their credentials? Oh, we need to change the password for the developers in QA. Okay, I should have a salt state to do that, right? We add all our users as the servers get built, but it's the after facts that we're not doing so good at right now. But that's almost it is an add-on to what we've already done. But it's something you need to think about. Otherwise, you end up with users who left. We migrated a whole bunch of systems in the last year and a half. I found a user that had left like 2 years before when we migrated one of those systems. I'm like, dude's got to go. He hadn't been here for a while. All right. That's actually it. Wow. Sorry. I think I'm doing really well on my time, actually. Yikes. The last time I did this for our DRE group, it took spot on 30 minutes. I really wanted that timer, and I couldn't get it to work. We are hiring at Everbridge. We got a whole list of things that we deal with. I'm not going to go through the list, but our team is hiring, the SREs as well. You'll go ahead and stand. This is one of my colleagues, Cassandra. She works on one of our DRE teams. She is the...
SRE.
I actually do. Is this getting recorded?
You heard it. I just got promoted.
She is the release queen. She does such a good job. She coordinates a lot of our releases, which are fairly complex affairs for some of our products. And she really does do a great job of that. So why don't you go ahead and talk real quick about the SRE stuff, about people that might want to join us for that.
So,
You need that.
thank you. So I am, as Keith said, on the one of the SRE teams at Everbridge. We have several SRE teams. We work with every technology that you see up here in at least one of our SRE teams. So wherever your interests lie, there is something we would love to hear from you about at Everbridge. We do have open SRE positions in addition to our DRE positions. And we work closely with this guy here, so it's a laugh riot. And feel free to approach either one of us outside of here.
My email address is up there if you want to send me an email about it. Thank you. I do appreciate that. I really didn't intend to get done so early. I've got a couple of resources, actually. Let me talk about this real quick. Somebody I know from a long time back from the MySQL world, his name's Baron Schwartz. He's started his own company a few years ago called Vivid Cortex. The link is up there. And he wrote an excellent book that if you are dealing with a data layer in a DevOps fashion, you need to go get. It's free. You have to give them your email, but it's free. It's 65 pages. I honestly, I took it, marked up the whole thing. It was terrific. Another good book is the database, and it's really the only book that's specifically about database reliability engineering. Database reliability engineering, designing and operating resilient database systems. It's an O'Reilly book written by Lane Campbell. Campbell? I'm from the South. I have trouble with pronunciation sometimes. But we got awesome food. And continuous delivery. Now, this is this is a classic. This is kind of what kicked off continuous integration, continuous delivery by Jez Humble. I would definitely highly recommend that as well. I think that's it. Yep. Does anybody have any questions?
Sure. You talked about using Salt for schema management, stuff like that, but you're also using RDS. So from what context do you run Salt states, considering you don't have...
I don't use RDSs.
Oh, okay. So
Please
you're
take
running...
those words back.
Okay.
No, we actually do use RDS. I'll just go ahead and use this. We do use RDSs in a couple of instances. The majority of ours are spun up EC2 instances because we need the the automated control of those. We could have a whole talk about RDS versus what we do. You don't have as much control over an RDS server. You have no real visibility into it. It's very much of a black box, okay? So all of this Salt stuff works. It doesn't work on RDS. So the few cases where we do have it, we are trying to migrate them off. They're customers, data layer service customers, and we are working to migrate them off, definitely, just because of that lack of control for, Anybody else have a question? Awesome.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for attending. Again, if you would, please go on your app, come into this session, and rate Keith's presentation. We would appreciate it. Thank you.